fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery with your hosts, Eric Shapiro, David North Martino, John Copenhaver, and Al Warren. Heard on KCAA 106.5 FM Los Angeles,
102.3 FM Riverside,
and 105.0 AM Palm Springs.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren, Mr. David Dime Store Martino.
It's Dime Store now. Okay.
We're back to the Dime Store because I'm
yes.
stuck in the 50s, and it's going to be 5 and dime.
5 and dime.
At best.
5 and 10 cent.
Wonder what you would have bought there back in the day, because you see, if they didn't have DVDs, so what would you be doing in a
Blu-rays?
Yeah, so what would you do in a 5 and dime?
Yeah, I don't know. You know, it's funny. We had 5 and dimes. They of course, didn't sell stuff for 5 cents and 10 cents, back in the 80s. But I can't remember what I bought in those stores.
Cheap earrings or something like that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All your makeup and stuff.
Yeah, that's it.
When you were going to the Kiss concert, you had to put on your parents, poor parents. Okay, well, let's enough of this cheap talk that you do all the time. We got serious people waiting here. We got a publisher, writers. We got this. This is important. You're sitting down, right?
I'm sitting down.
Well, good. Now we're going to talk about a new book called House of Haunts, and Heather Daughrity is the author, editor, and her husband is a publisher and has written books as well, Joshua Lloyd Fox. So thank you for being here, guys.
Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Heather, so you've got this book, House of Haunts. So what is it we're talking about here? Now, of course, you got a foreword by Josh Mellerman, so that's going to be a huge boost for you, but it's also got to, do you feel a lot of pressure when you have a foreword from someone so big?
It definitely, I was nervous to send him the stories, because he is big and obviously knows what he's doing. And so when we finally had the whole anthology put together and ready to send to him, because his foreword was the last part of it, I was a little nervous. I thought, gosh, I hope he thinks this is as good as I think it is. And then he did, so that worked out nicely, I guess, all around.
Because that would be crazy. You send it to him, and then he's like, oh, it's good, only you need to, and they start giving you all this advice. That would be like just devastating, right?
So the foreword he wrote was wonderful, gorgeous, great stuff in the book. But my favorite thing was the message he sent me. He was in the process of reading the book, and he sent me a message that just said, this book, it is so fucking good. And I was like, Josh Mallerman just said my book is so
How dare you?
good. Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, that's high praise for me.
No, it is. I know. I'm the only guy he said that about too. But that was on a different thing. It wasn't about a book. That was a totally different thing we did. But so you guys are together, and now let's get this right. Now you have a publishing house, right? So you have a small publishing house. Is that sort of how you guys got together originally, or?
Yeah. So we became Facebook friends. I lived in the DC area, and just for the book stuff. At the time, I believe, and I hate to say this, I don't want to sound egotistical, I was a little bigger than you, I think, because I had the book tour and everything. So I don't know who caught whose attention on Facebook, but we became Facebook friends and started talking. And then when I had a book signing in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I just reached out to her and I said, hey, I'm going to be in Barnes & Noble in Tulsa doing a book signing if you want to come by. And maybe we could even talk to the people there, see if we can get you a signing, because she had a book called Tales My Grandmother's Told Me coming out soon. And so we did. We met last year in June time frame, in person, although we'd been friends for several months before that on Facebook, but meeting in person at my book signing. And then I took you over to Beth, who was the bookseller there, and it set you up your own signing. And then we dropped off. And I actually dropped off because I was doing my own stuff in my own life. And then I owed her a review for Tales that I never wrote. I still haven't written it. And when I owe somebody something and I'm not able to do it, I have a really bad habit of just ignoring them. So hopefully they go away and stop making me feel guilty. And this next year in March, you were reaching out about Texas Author Con, asking me if I wanted to go. And I said, oh, Heather, hey, what's going on with you? And we started talking, and come to find out we had both been single for that whole last almost year. And our lives were moving weirdly in parallel courses. And that talk became one of many. And about 4 months later, we tied the knot at Bishop Castle in Colorado, and Water Tower Hill Publishing, my press, absorbed her press. And we're now moving forward by leaps and bounds. We're compounding everything we had started doing now that we're doing it together.
Yeah, but Heather, did you actually buy a book at that book signing and get him to sign it?
I did not buy a book. He gave me a book. I started out in the book world as a book reviewer, and I did that for a couple of years before I started writing my own stuff. And so he told me when he invited me to come to his book signing, I'll give you the one of my books that I think you'll like best, and hopefully you'll give me a review for it. And he gave me the book, and I did give him a review for it, and
3 stars.
He still to this day won't let me forget that I only gave him.
Maybe it was a 1, right? She was being nice.
She told me it needed a good edit, and since then she has edited it.
It's more than 3 stars now because it's had a good
3.5.
There you go.
Editing's really important. I think a lot of writers don't realize especially in today's world, I'm not saying yours, but in today's world with Amazon and with the availability, you can just publish anything so quickly and instantly. You just need a few bucks. You don't need to have any of that stuff behind you, really. So a lot of people put things out, and writers that have really good ideas, but they don't necessarily run it through an editor. So editing is really important, don't you think?
Well, I am an editor. That's how I make my money. That's my day job. I edit other people's books. And I always say, kill your darlings, but pay your editors, because I've read so many books that are great ideas, but have so many just basic grammatical errors, misspellings and stuff in them that it really takes away from the story. And I'm like, guys, get your book edited. It will do so much better. It's worth it. Trust me. Pay your editors.
I will say in her review, and even if it was 3 stars, that doesn't matter, but her review was my favorite. So I write a series of books that are multi-genre, and it's a serial killer thriller book. And I thought her being a horror fanatic, they would be the only one that I've written that she would even like. I didn't give her any of the other ones. But I held on to that review, and even the suggestions she made within it stuck with me. I mean, maybe that made you stick with me a bit, and I think that's how we are. So she says pay your editors, and I say if you can't do that, marry them.
Well, yeah, that's a cheaper way of doing it.
It is. In the short term, yes.
Yeah, checks in the mail, right? Heather, why did you get into editing? Like, what was it that drew you there? Was it something you'd always been?
Need for money.
Okay, perfect.
I started doing reviews, and then I started writing, and after my second book came out, which was Tales My Grandmother Told Me, I had been married before. I had been a stay-at-home mom, had not worked, and had an income of my own for like 20 years. And homeschooled 5 kids. Yeah. So, but my ex-husband and I split up last year, and all of a sudden I needed to make money, but I also needed to be there for my kids. And so I was just sort of racking my brain for what skills do I have that I can use and still be able to work at home and be with my kids, take care of them and stuff. And I've always been kind of a grammar fanatic. Author friends have asked me to read over their short stories and see if there's anything they need to change or whatever many times before. And I just thought, maybe I can actually make money at this. And so I started slow. I would just do books for individual authors at first. And then now I work with 3 different publishing houses. Well, I guess 4 if you include ours, but 3 besides ours that I edit stuff for, and still some individual authors now and then when I get asked. But I I make good enough money doing it.
You shouldn't sell yourself short. I'll tell you something about my wife. She has the personality and the brain, because in the book world, you get known for what you're best at. For me, I'm a logistics guy. I could format anything and I do it longhand, the old style way. But when you get that reputation as being fantastic as an editor, but you're also affordable and you're super nice and you're affirmative in your edits. You're like, hey, change this, but I really like this. She's got a reputation in the book world as an editor that that got her a Mallerman as a forward. Don't sell yourself short, love. I don't think it was all for money. I think is who you are. And when the world sees that you're doing what you're best at, they will beat a path to your door.
Yeah, you should see my door. It's been broken down for months. It's so when you guys get together, like I always say this, so much of our life affects what we do in our artistic endeavors, whether it's painting, writing, acting, whatever it is. You can't help but absorb your life at home. So now your lives have changed. You've met, married, moved in together and all that. So Joshua, how has Heather changed your writing, do you think?
Wow. I will say that my writing and publishing, and we both maintain a day job through all this, but I was able to kind of take a step back and take a consulting job instead of full 80-hour a week job like I had before. But our life now, and that's such a great question, our life now is books. We wake up books, we go to sleep books. It's both of our passion and purpose. And so I would say, go back to that compounding statement I made earlier, in that I wrote and published books for the last 4 years as a side hustle, is a really good way to say it, as a way to just get my toes in the door. And once Heather and I married, it's our life. I rarely worry and focus on the day job. I do what I need to do and I jump right back on. I have an L-shaped desk and I have my day job on one side and my book stuff on the other. But on the book stuff, we have 2 chairs pulled up to the desk and we sit here, and she has her laptop and I have my laptop with the monitor or two. And it's changed so much in that way, the life, the day to day. But then in my writing, I literally have my editor sleeping next to me, and I could say, hey, how did I do this with this chapter, this sentence, this paragraph? What do you think about this? How does it flow? Did I get this plot point correctly? So the logistics, the science behind putting out a really good book, which we see in House of Haunts as we work together to make that one what it is, when your whole life is just wrapped around that. And we have kids and we have shared interest and we do all this other stuff, but man, his books are complete life.
Right. Does your chair vibrate? Is it a massage chair?
No, we just take turns giving each other massages.
Yeah, we're just like, hey, can you grab this shoulder for me right here?
Well, Heather, how has this affected your writing, do you think? Do you notice any differences in the way you write now?
He's gonna think this is funny. It's not so much my writing style. It's what would you say? I pay more attention to the way the pages look, because he has all this, I don't know, knowledge, wisdom about how a book should actually look when it's put together. Not just the story, but the way the pages look and the way the paragraphs are split up and how much white space there is around the words. And he's really made me, I just break my paragraphs apart like crazy now that I'm married to him, because I'm like, you don't want to have these big, huge blocks of text all together because people tend to skip over the last half. You got to break it up. And so I pay much more attention to that kind of stuff than I ever did before in my own writing. And actually, I pay attention to it now more when I'm editing other people's writing. And I'm like, hey, sorry, I'm going to make your book like 20 pages longer just because I'm going to start splitting up these paragraphs like crazy so that your page looks better. That's all Josh's fault.
Yeah. I'm really into readability scores, negative space on a page, pagination, paragraph and sentence structure. I love the science and the logistics behind a book. Now, I love to write an entertaining story. That's fine. But I'm a science guy first and a logistics guy. I was an engineer for 25 years. So I love the science of putting a book together. Even the binding and the margins and page size and trim and all. I just love it. That's just the fun part of it for me. So you're welcome. I taught you some stuff.
You did teach me some stuff. I'll admit it. You taught me some stuff. It's all right.
Well, writers don't know to think about that stuff. That's editors and publishers' job. But when you're editing, and if you can do that for them from the get-go and go, hey, let's make your page a little bit more readable because of this scientific study they started back in the 60s and 70s in the military for maintenance manuals. Readability scores, the Fleisch score for readability is so important in the industry. And if you go talk to any of the big publishers at the Big Five, they know exactly what I'm talking about because it sells books.
Well, Heather, when you create a horror short story anthology like House of Haunts, as an editor, what do you look for when you're picking short stories?
Well, this anthology was a little different than most. I couldn't just send out an open submission call because the way this book is set up, there's a story in each room of our house. So I couldn't just say, hey, I need a bunch of stories about rooms in a house, because I would have ended up with, I think I said yesterday, I'd ended up with 12 kitchens and no bathrooms. I had to approach individual authors one at a time and say, I'm doing this, but if you want to do it, you have to pick your room. That's your room. You're stuck with it, basically. And then, I would take that room off my list and go to the next author and say, here's what's left. Which room would you like? And I had to go through that 23 times till we had our whole house filled up with authors.
I will say we did have a few authors submit stories that were a little bit more splatter horror or a little bit more outside of what your original call was. And those had to be reworked as well because you wanted the classic horror ghost story kind of rather than the shock horror. And I learned that in the horror world there's actually levels of it, and I didn't realize that there's actually some clean, nice, normal looking church going horror readers, and then there's the ones that just love things grinding up in a garbage disposal kind of thing. So
although we do have
that
garbage disposal in this book.
But being the editor of an anthology, which I learned as well, the idea was hers, the way she set it up, the way she divided it, everything up, the original concept. But when she made the call out to the authors who she finally chose, and I think you had 60 authors reach out.
I had a lot more authors
and
want to be involved than I could actually have involved.
And when Mallerman signed on early, and you had Clay signed on early, Gage, Greenwood, some big names in the horror world, because of who Heather is. Again, she's got a good name in the horror world, and she knows the right people like Jennifer Ann Gordon and stuff. So she put that name out, and then she's the one that really curated would be the best word I could use. Not even edited, but curated this tour through this haunted house in the grounds and the concepts of everything. And then, she just turned to me to make it happen. And so it turned into exactly what it is now. I'm sure if you got on social media or Amazon, House of Haunts is just blowing up everywhere this week. So super proud of you, lady.
Thank you.
Yeah, lady. What you kind of outline in your mind as a story and how you want this book to come together, this anthology, and you're sitting there thinking this, and then you put out the calls, and then you decide on the stories and all that. Now that it's finished and it's published, and you look at the book, does it look like what you had envisioned at the beginning?
Well, actually, it looks much, much better. And there's a few reasons for that. Originally, our house was going to have 12 rooms, and I had, I think, the first 10 authors, and I wasn't really sure who to choose for the next two. I thought I was kind of pushing my luck. I had asked so many people that I thought would say no, and then they had said yes. So I was getting a little nervous to ask anyone else. So I just put out a call on Facebook and said, because I know a lot of authors, and I said, who would like to write a ghost story for this book? I had 2 spots left. I had about 60 people respond to me. So I made sort of a executive decision to add more rooms to the house and have more stories. And it went up to 16, and then it was 20, and then it was 24, and then it went back down. We ended up with 23. I still had to tell a lot of people no, which I didn't like having to do. But the reason the book is so much better than I thought it would be to begin with is two reasons. First of all, the way that the authors ended up working together, we sort of formed this family as we worked on this book together. We had a Facebook group, a private group where we would just talk. I set out the very basics. I said, here's basic storyline of Hale House. I drew up floor plans just on some graph paper of what the house looked like, where the rooms were, so that people could know, okay, my room is next to this other person's room, and they would talk to each other and stories, and had asked authors to add in little bits of other people's stories to their stories so that the whole thing sort of melded together, and that's fabulous. But the book as a physical object looks 10,000 times better than I ever thought it would, because I met and married this guy, Josh, who can take the hottest mess of a collection of Word documents and make it into a gorgeously, gorgeously formatted book. So he gets all the praise for the way the actual physical book looks. He did all the formatting. He put in all the graphics. He took my sad little floor plans that I drew on graph paper and made them into these beautiful sort of Victorian architectural drawings that are in the book. He just made everything so pretty, and it's just, the book itself to hold in your hands and look at is the most gorgeous thing, and that is all his work, and I am so thankful that he came along, because I could never have made it look as good as it does.
The bill's in the mail.
Well,
So, tell me, which author did you ever get like a story and you go, this is terrible, and so who is it? And let's get them on the line here. I want to.
Oh, my
no. They're no.
Well, you're no fun. Come on, let's get some controversy.
We had one author whose story was a little more extreme than I was comfortable with putting in the book. And
Dave sent a story?
no. There are some people in the book are extreme horror authors, but I said in the very first letter that I sent out, we don't want super extreme. Obviously, it's horror. There's maybe going to be some blood and some, violence, whatever, but not too extreme. We're going for a more old school Victorian Gothic haunted house kind of feel here.
Well, it wasn't even that he wasn't unwilling to change the story, is that you have some writers that get into this mindset. They're like, the story takes over and just tells itself. I don't know how true that is. I've written 6 novels at 100,000 words plus, and I'm a pantser. Things happen that I don't expect to happen, but I in no way let a story take over, especially if I'm writing within guidelines and word count rules because of the publishing cost. You have 23 authors, and if they all write 15,000 words, stories, that book's going to be too expensive to publish. And so she set those rules in place, and because of artistic license, we had to tell one author, pretty much no. And there's no right or wrong about that, but she had very clear guidelines. And when writers take artistic license outside of those guidelines and then blame said artistic license, you're not being the team player, and you're certainly not, wanting to be a part of this, and especially when we have 22 other authors who are not doing that. So yeah, we had a bit of drama in this, but it got sorted.
Well, we have them on the line. No, Joshua, so when you're sitting there writing a story, how does it come to you then? Are you getting characters in your mind? Do you have a relationship with the characters you write in your books, or is it completely separate?
So there's a bit of me in every. So I write a fantasy sci-fi series right now that's gaining traction. It's called the Archangel Missions, and it's multi-genre, so multi characters. So I have men and women and young people, old people. I have homosexual relationships, and I have interracial relationships and stuff, because I like to tell the truth in my books. But I when I sit down, I kind of know where I want it to end up, and I have these great huge concepts for each book, and the series end is going to be pretty crazy. But really and truly, when I sit down, it's kind of like, have you sat down to watch the next episode of say a TV series that you like and it only comes out once a week? And you're like, this is what I want to see in the next series or the next show. And you're like, I want to see, Cersei Lannister get stabbed in the throat, or I want to see, whatever show you're watching. And then that doesn't happen, but you're still satisfied with what they ended up doing. So that's the best analogy I can give for when I sit down. I have an expectation of where I want it to go, but that's usually not what happens. But then what does happen works. And then people have asked me, where do you get your ideas for your plot twist? Where do you get, do you sit down and you're like these guys that Stephen King talks about in On Writing, where they clock in at 6 a.m. and they clock out at 10 a.m. and they did 2,000 words and that was it. And I'm like, no, I get stuck on something and I'll just go about my day. And some way, somehow, I'm in the shower, I'm pushing a grocery cart, I'm doing something, and then the idea is just there like it always was. And that's here I am using artistic license. But yeah, that's how I've written now in 4 years, 6 full novels. It just I sit down and I expect something, and then I'm as entertained as anybody else by what actually gets put on the page.
So is it the story that comes first, or is it the characters?
For me, the characters, and not even the characters' actions. For me, it's the emotions. I want my character to feel this, so this has to happen. And if I did good character development in the beginning, where I kind of know how my character would react to something, it's the emotions of my characters that drive me. I'm an emotional, character-driven writer. Action and description, I'm a very minimalist writer, but I will 100% put in there how a character felt about a specific situation. And that probably stems a lot from being a little bit more of an emotionally intelligent person rather than just watching action movies and football and drinking beer and barbecuing with the guys. I'm a little bit different when it comes to that. Yeah, it's character driven first, and then within that character is the emotions.
So that's Heather that watches the football with the guys and drinks beer.
I think it's quite funny that he said that, because he does do all those things, barbecue and watch football and stuff. But he's a complex individual.
Yeah,
multifaceted.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Renaissance man. He does it all.
There you go.
That is true. What he said is not wrong, but he also does all these other things.
Well, how do you take this? Like, Heather, what kind of relationship do you have with your characters? And do you sort of create them in your minds? Do you see them as real? Do you hear their voices like when you're doing dialogue, or how is your experience writing characters?
It's been a while since I actually wrote anything of my own. I'm going to have to think about that. I grew up on reading my grandmother's old collections of ghost stories. That's the horror that sort of made me. And so I tend to write in that same sort of style, where the atmosphere is kind of a character of its own. And when I sit down to write a story, my first thought is not what is the plot or what are the characters like. My first thought is, what emotions am I trying to evoke here, and how am I going to do that? What am I going to do to my characters to get this emotion out of my readers? Is that deep? Am I being deep right now?
No, it's like you think at a different way of going into it. You think about how the reader is going to experience what you're writing, whereas most writers, it's how they're experiencing it, and then other people can like it or not. That's interesting. I like that.
No, I'm absolutely trying to get a certain sort of response out of my reader when I write something.
Like hate mail?
No, not.
Oh, we can send you that.
Yes.
Don't worry.
No.
So when you do that, and you're conscious of your reader, does that also go into, because you're doing horror, like for instance in the new book, are you thinking about the violence that you write in the book, or that comes across in the book? Are you conscious of what some readers in today's culture are how they're going to react to that?
I am conscious of that. I personally don't write anything terribly violent. My stuff is much more quiet, slow burn, psychological kind of horror.
Like comfy horror?
Cozy horror.
Cozy horror.
Quite call it cozy horror.
Cozy horror.
But I'm not an extreme horror writer in any way. I think that the unknown is what is scariest to everyone. In some way, whatever you're afraid of relates to something that you don't know, you don't understand, you can't control. So I really try to just play on that when I write. Like people are afraid of the dark, not that the dark itself is scary, but that when you're in the dark, you don't know what's around you. You don't know if there's danger nearby. You don't know, what's coming at you. You don't know how to protect yourself because you don't know what you have to protect yourself from. That's why people are afraid of the dark. And it all goes back to the unknown and not being in control of your situation. That's what scares people. So I try to play on that, but I don't do it in any sort of a violent.
No, you're just stressing folks out.
I like people to say, that scene was so tense, or I could really feel, the characters' fear or their anxiety or whatever in the scene. But I definitely try to do that in a very quiet.
More like a Alfred Hitchcock sort of, more of a terror or tension.
Yeah.
We just had that conversation last night.
We had a whole conversation about Alfred Hitchcock last night.
It was what we were watching Fall of the House of Usher, and
yeah.
The gentleman that's highly respected that does all those shows is just ripping off Hitchcock. He's taking other people's work and putting it in a bite-sized, chewable way that society's accepting it now and making money hand over fist while not being original. It's a whole conversation we had last night. But Hitchcock is who I enjoy in that, at least in that regard, the old school way of doing things. And
take your character and make it, what would they do in a situation? Like how far would they go in a situation? Like a question, like it's taking a normal person and putting them under stress. I mean, that's kind of the ultimate of fear in a lot of people, terror.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And, and going back to your original question, I wanted to just add one thing onto that about thinking about how society absorbs content in these days and how careful you have to be to try to not upset certain people. When I started writing my first fictional novel, it's called Had I Not Chosen, I wrote what I knew. I'm a straight white Christian male, and that's what I wrote. And I had an editor at the time, and I loved to work with very diverse people. And so I had an editor that was a young gay woman that was a brilliant editor, but I enjoyed her viewpoint of the world because it was so different than mine. It was almost polar opposite. And so where I would write a line that maybe come across as masochistic or definitely like, hey, you're too much man in this line, it really got me to thinking, like super got me to thinking. So I finished Chosen, ended that, and I started Amongst You. And in Amongst You, I 100% wanted to write about police brutality and people that I don't have really anything in common with in the external. And man, I think another thing that writers, if they don't do it, they should do it, is almost making yourself uncomfortable, writing things that maybe would help you to research if you don't know it, or understand that the way you see the world is not how the world may really work. And going back to how you want to provoke a response from your reader, I get very nervous, extremely nervous, especially as we grow, about offending anybody with my writing. And I know they say you shouldn't worry about that. Don't try to please anybody but yourself. But it is a scary situation in the world today as you grow more and your name gets out there more and you have a reputation. And for me, it's also for my children and stuff. So I think about that too now when I'm writing, trying to write from a less Christian white male viewpoint. And I think it comes across now, several books in, that maybe I, in this process, have seen the world differently and hope that my readers do too.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting world. Like things are changing around us daily, and so it's something to be aware of. But yeah, you can't change your original concept too much, but you have to be conscious, I guess, of who your readers are. It
makes the story better, right? I think it does when I have people as characters within my book. So the serial killer book I gave to her is 3 fluent males. One of them becomes a serial killer because he saw a childhood episode of police brutality where two of his childhood friends that were black were killed, and it made him want to change society by fear instead of throwing a bunch of money behind charities and stuff. So he becomes a serial killer, a very prolific serial killer, and all he's doing is literally trying to create fear in society so that people would go back to the police, would go back to relying on those who protect us from that very thing. It doesn't end well for him. I don't want to spoil it, but he definitely makes the social changes in my book that he tried to. But my original point was putting diverse people in that book made it so much richer and bigger. And man, did I have to really swallow some prejudices I had that I wasn't even aware of to get that book finished.
You, in a way, when you're writing a story like that, it's very, very personal and very, you put a lot of your own emotions into it. In a way, doesn't that kind of make you feel a little bit vulnerable, exposing yourself even on the page?
Yeah, well, yes, but 2 books before that, I wrote my own memoir of my own life and why I am the way I am and the decisions I've made. And that was a vulnerability that I wouldn't wish on anybody. And I remember when I first sat down with a literary agent and I had finished, the book's called I Won't Be Shaken. But I get all my names mixed up. I Won't Be Shaken. And I sat down with a literary agent in DC and she asked me, she goes, Josh, listen, it's a great book. You're saying stuff that men normally don't say. And I think it'll be really big. But here's the question I have for you. Are you able to answer questions about what you wrote? If you go into an interview and the person has read this book and knows your deepest, darkest secrets, which I put in that book, can you answer to it now? Man, that's a gut check moment. That's a, should I really be doing this? Because now the world's going to know fully who Joshua Daughrity is, Joshua Lloyd Fox, and why I am the way I am and done what I've done and why people feel the way they feel about me. So I'm answering your question in that I had written that first book. So by the time I got to Like Amongst You, it wasn't as bad. And I think that I get a lot of praise, especially from like women and stuff, that I can write points of views not like my own pretty well. And I think it's only because I did the vulnerability stuff first, and it created a fearlessness in my writing to just go ahead and just put what I believe is the truth in there, and come hell or high water, just stick to who I am.
Well, Heather, House of Haunts, how do you think this process has changed you as a writer and an editor?
Well, I've learned some things. This was my first anthology. I just got it in my head that I wanted to do this, that I like writing, but the idea of sort of being the curator, the orchestrator of an anthology, of bringing all these things together and making them work together appealed to me more than just writing my own books. And I have had a lot of fun with this, but I've also had a lot of stress. I've learned a lot of things about how books are made, about the publishing world, legal stuff, everything. There's a lot involved in making a book that involves 22, 23 other people. So I'm a very introverted person, and this required me to kind of step out of that and be, well, like Josh just said, take on more of a leadership kind of role. And luckily I was working with people who are mostly, friends, or have become even better friends since we started this process. I've had to sort of step up in my own life and become more confident in what I'm doing, in my own choices, and trusting my own instincts on what's going to work and what's not, and how things need to move around, and to sometimes have to be the bad cop, the tough guy that says, no, we're not going to do this way. This is how we set out to do this, and we can't just change it in order to be nice to other people. So there's that. I don't know if that actually answered your question. That's just where my mind went.
I like when you put on your head.
Kind of confidence. I think I get that you gained a lot of confidence going through this.
I did gain a lot of confidence. And, I guess my confidence levels started when I started doing my last book, my collection of short stories, Tales My Grandmother Told Me. because I realized, and I've said this several times on social media, that a lot of times in the literary world, you just have to ask. And people, more often than not, will say yes for whatever you need help with. It's a great community, and people help each other if you just have the guts to ask for whatever you need. And sometimes people can't do it, or, they're busy, or they just don't want to. You do get told no sometimes, but I have discovered that you get told yes more often than no. But like I said, for me, as such an introverted person, I was a horribly, painfully shy child. So for me to go to someone that I don't know or just barely know and ask them to help me with something, that's a huge thing for me. So my confidence boosting, I guess, sort of started at that point, which was a couple of years ago. And I guess the whole writing literary world has sort of started turning me into a person that I was not before, and giving me a confidence in myself and my own abilities.
Well, speaking of the literary world, I'm curious, how did you get connected to the horror community? I ended up finding them, especially horror writers of the 80s and 90s, on a old website called Chalklines, their forum back when they had website forums. How did you get connected?
Well, I've always loved horror. When I was little, when I first learned to read, when I would go to the library, I would go straight to the Halloween books. Like, even when I could just read picture books, I always liked ghosts and vampires and witches and monsters. I don't know why. I've always loved that sort of story. My grandmother, who was probably the most influential person in my life growing up, also loved horror. It was her books, her old Victorian ghost anthologies that I read, when I was 10, 11, 12, 13. And then my uncle, who was also very into horror, when I was 14, he handed me a box of books. He had a million books, and he was clearing out his shelves of things he had, multiple copies of or whatever. And he handed me a box of books, and it was Anne Rice and Ramsey Campbell and Brian Lumley and, Richard Matheson, all these sort of the big 80s and 90s horror people. So I started reading those when I got to high school. I actually didn't read Stephen King till I was about 17, which is sacrilege in the horror community, but it is what it is. So I've always liked those. That's always been my preferred genre to read. In 2020, when we were all stuck at home during lockdown, I had even more time on my hands than I ever had. I don't want to say I had more time on my hands. We were stuck at home, and my kids were finally old enough that I didn't have to pay attention to them constantly. Like, they could go do their own thing. So I had some more time than I normally would. And I started talking about the books that I was reading. And it turned into being a reviewer, getting review copies from authors and publishers, to the point that I was reading and reviewing 120, 130, sometimes 150 books a year, all in the horror genre. And because I was doing that, on all social media, I would review a horror author's book, and they would follow me or friend me or whatever, and I sort of built up this.
Well, back up. You wrote fantastic reviews.
Okay.
That's a key point.
People like my reviews. Yes, that's true. So on Instagram is where I started doing that, Bookstagram, and I had a lot of horror authors and readers who followed me on there. And then when I started my Facebook page, which was more as an author than a reviewer, most of those followers sort of came over and also followed me there. And then connections were made through those people to other people. And it just grew into this, 95% of the people on my friends lists on any social media platform are horror people. And the horror community, and Josh likes to tease me about this, we're very tight. We're a tight little community. And we help each other out and look out for each other and promote each other.
Don't let her belittle herself. She gets mail from Random House, from like the Big Five to review she gets art copies of books coming out. I mean, how do you get a Mallerman to do a forward for you when you're not super well known, right? Well, it's because somebody knew somebody that knew what you were doing for these big name authors. And she got her foot in the door the hard way. But because she's so talented and has such a way with words and reviewing, and like people will read her reviews, and if she gives a book a 3-star, it deserved a 3-star, or a 5-star, it deserved a 5-star, and she'll tell you exactly why. And she got the attention of some of the biggest people in the book world because of that. And that's how you get these people like Clay McLeod Chapman, and did I say that right? I just call him McLeod.
McLeod.
Or Gage Greenwood, or Josh Mallerman, or I think Mother Horror is reading your book right now. And so she did it the hard way and the right way. And it's amazing. So she likes to say, well, I started this and this. No. We get mail from the big names at this house.
I started at the bottom and worked my way slowly up to where I am now. Let's put it that way.
Jeez, I slept my way. Well, listen, Heather, what do you want people to get out of House of Haunts?
House of Haunts, it's my baby. It's my first foray into this world. And I based this anthology in the part of horror that I know best, which is the haunted house ghost story. It's kind of old school. I want people to just be able to read it and enjoy it. I want them to be entertained by it. There are stories in there that will make you want to cry. There are stories that will make you cringe. There are stories that will make you want to throw things. There's one or two that will gross you out a little bit. I just want people to be able to pick it up and enjoy it, like we did back in the day before everything became complicated or political or philosophical. It's just good stories, you'll be entertained by it. You'll be sucked into it and pass some time in the world of Hale House and forget about real life for a while and just be spooked, get some goosebumps. That's the best feeling in the world to me. I can remember even as a kid reading a good ghost story and you get that, shiver down your spine. And it's such a sort of beautifully innocent response to a story. And I just want people to have that. I don't want it to have to be this complicated thing. I just want it to be a pleasurable, scary reading experience.
Did you write that down? That's not practiced.
Yeah. Hold on. I'm writing this down. I'm learning how to be a writer here. I've got to try and get it. Listen, guys. So where do people find you? Where do you like people to find you? Do you interact with readers? Do you have social media set up, website, bars you hang out in? Like, where do people find you guys and Water Tower Hill Publishing?
Well, yes to all those.
Yes to all of those. So, my website's joshualloydfox.com. Hers is Heather Miller Horror. Water Tower Hill is on all the social medias, and we're growing. We just signed 6 new authors for next year. One's a professor in college that wrote a Latino vampire story we're excited about. Another one wrote a true crime fictionalization in Mississippi we're excited about. When we went back to the very beginning of this interview and we talked about the multi-genres that aren't all horror, that's what Water Tower Hill is all about. And then Parlor Ghost Press is going to release the next book in this House of Haunts series. Is going to be called Hospital of Haunts. We released that yesterday.
No, we released the news of it yesterday.
We released the news of it coming October 1st of next year. So because of the success of House of Haunts, we're just going to ride that train as you do in the book world. And yeah, you can find us everywhere. Water Tower Hill, on social media, Joshua Lloyd Fox, Heather Miller Horror.com.
Yeah, all my social media pages are Daughrity Horror on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X now. It's the same thing on all those. There's a Parlor Ghost Press Facebook page. And if people would like to order our special limited edition signed and numbered version of House of Haunts, they can order it from the Parlor Ghost Press Facebook page. There's a direct link to order it there. Or you can find it on Amazon in all formats.
And they're coming to like Gibson's up in Concord, New Hampshire, just got their order in today. We're in Ingram, so we're getting bookstores to get it in. Any kind of media for that, including this show, is helping with that. So yeah, we're hoping to be stupidly visible and right in your face, moving forward into
in a
this
nice
next
way.
year. Not even in a nice way.
I'll be in a nice way. And if you want to find us at the bar, lately we like to hang out at the Cigar Box.
Yeah, Cigar Box.
Here in Tulsa. It's a nice It's a nice, dark, smoky jazz in the background, you know, sort of mid-century kind of feel to it bar. It's great. We like to go in there. He smokes a cigar. We have some whiskey and relax.
Where Gardner's knows us really well here. Magic City Books, we're hoping to get in there with them here in Tulsa. We like Tulsa as a book. It's a good book city. It really is.
Well, fantastic. Now we're going to have everything up on our websites, and so people can find you easily. So, of course, the book to look for is House of Haunts. And our guests, Heather Daughrity and Joshua Lloyd Fox, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you both.
You've been listening to the House of Mystery radio show. To find out more about our guests, hosts, or shows, go to www.houseofmystery.com.
Show's over for now.
Was it as good for you as it was for me?
Well, good night.
This has been a production of Something Weird Media.
I'll be back.